Mike. There we go. Okay. No. Your sets were working correctly. It was just the classic fake out where you don't turn on the mic. Um, so there comes a time every week, and it's always a Tuesday, when a person sort of sits down and says, I've got a stream. I got a stream right now. And that time is 2 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday, and here we are, streaming together. We're going to talk about learning languages. We're going to talk about Conlangs. We're going to work on our Conlang, and we're going to have a good time. So, it is sufficiently warm, it is sufficiently bright, and I think we're sufficiently prepped to start talking a little bit about learning languages. Now, as a bit of background on my learning languages shtick, I'm a big believer in just keeping your interest at the very center of everything you do when you're learning a language. So for me, I find language learning intrinsically interesting. So, you'd have to tie me up and stop me from learning languages. But I know that it's not always at that high level of a priority for people. It's not even always at that high level of a priority for me. And so I've been asked a bunch of times in recent months, what's the way to learn languages for sort of the rest of us, people who don't have shelves full of grammar books? How do you fit that into your life? And so I think that's what we're going to talk about first. And I'm going to structure this as a sort of top 10 list, top 10 non-boring language learning tips. So the segment begins. If you are joining us later on in the future on YouTube, welcome. We're going to be talking about learning languages and how to do it in a way that is not extraordinarily boring. So if this is your kind of thing and you like what we're talking about, like, subscribe. I could tell you a story about a man who traveled to a distant land and encountered a gigantic mountain and climbed up the mountain for days. At every sort of stop, a monk said, turn back, it's not worth it. The man kept climbing. He kept climbing. He hit the top of the mountain, and when he got there, he found a temple, and in the temple was a bell. And what he did was he rang the bell because that was the notification bell that told him when the stream was live. So, be like the hermit. Don't be dissuaded. Click that button, and here we go. Okay, top 10. Number 10, or number 1. I don't know if it should go in ascending or descending order. Number one, tip for learning languages. Learning in school should not be your first choice. Of course, if you find yourself in school and they offer, language classes and it fits in with everything you're doing, definitely take it. It's not going to hurt. But don't feel that you need to wait until you have a formal class to start learning something, to start learning a language. Learning languages in school has a really, really bad track record. I think we all can think of someone who's told us at one point, I took French all through school and all I can say is bonjour. And is this something that we're happy with? You spend 4 years learning something, you come out with basically nothing. How is that possible that we're okay with this sort of as a society? But it's utterly normal. And the fact that no one's shocked by this is itself kind of shocking to me. And the reason is just language learning in classrooms just doesn't tend to happen. And, it may work for some people, especially if you're the kind of person who has a shelf full of grammar books, but for most people, that time could be a lot better spent. So, and don't blame the teachers. They're operating within the set of constraints that they're operating in. There are always budget constraints, time constraints, what's just possible in a given organization. But language learning within a classroom is sort of based on an idea that a language is a subject like any other. Language is not really a subject like any other. It's not a subject like chemistry or geography, which you can just sit down and, learn as many facts as you can. And then after you've learned enough facts, you know that thing. It's not a set of facts by and large. Because if it were, you could sit down for 4 years, maybe once a day through your high school years and learn French or Spanish or German or what have you. But this doesn't seem to be the case. And so tip number one is don't wait for a formal institution to come along and sort of set you down the road. That's not the way. That's not the best way to spend your time. And it's permission that you don't need. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, practice does not always make perfect in language learning. And this is really kind of interesting because there are so many things in life that if you want to get better at them, you practice. You want to get better at playing the piano, you practice the piano. You want to get better at singing, you practice singing. But with a language, what we're doing is not really acquiring a skill so much as growing something kind of organic in our mind. So it's like growing a plant. What does a plant need? Light, water, some nutrients in the soil. What a language needs to grow is content from the environment, which we'll call input, and we'll get to that in a little bit. And it needs what your mind comes sort of as firmware. It comes a lot, you've got stuff in your mind that's going to allow you to learn languages over time, given enough exposure. So it's not something that you have to practice necessarily, although there are aspects of it that practice will improve. But this means that you don't have to worry so much about baking in mistakes. It's just, so if you make a grammatical mistake, this is really representing the state of your mental model of the language. And you are not going to necessarily bake in an incorrect state of that mental model just by repeating something that comes out of it. So if, say, you're learning English and you haven't learned how the past tense is formed quite yet, and so instead of saying I sang, you say I singed. You're just sort of over regularizing that verb. So instead of, we have walk, walked, but we have sing, sang. But instead of that, you say sing, singed. Don't worry about that. That's not going to be something that gets baked into your model of the language. Eventually, as you hear more and more English, you will realize that the past tense of sing is sang. And so don't let it give you pause about, refusing to speak because you might accidentally make some error ingrained, because that's not that doesn't seem to be what happens. Okay. So what was that? Was that 2? That was 2. Number 3 is input, input, input. So I alluded to this before, but really the most important thing, the biggest ingredient for learning a language, or if we want to be more precise, acquiring a language, that would be a technical distinction that you could make. Although in sort of casual speech, we can talk about learning languages. The input is language that you encounter in your environment, and what's your environment is just everything you do. So this would be language that you hear, language that you read, in conversation, watching TV, podcasts, whatever it is. And this is really the important thing. This is the sort of the crucial ingredient in language learning. And so the more of this you get, the better. And if you're going to optimize for something, just optimize for the quantity of this input. Now, it does get a little bit more intricate than that, because we have to talk about what kind of input. But as a first approximation, let's just get more input. And it's, if you think about going back to the classroom idea, how much input do you really get in a language class? Say, I'm thinking back to a class I took in undergrad. In my first year, I took Russian, and we met for 5 days a week. It was every day. It was a pretty intense class for an undergrad, an undergrad language class every day. So 5 hours a week. How much Russian did I actually encounter in that? Well, not 5 hours, because there's a substantial amount of the class in English. There's a lot of sort of, administrative stuff. So let's say, I'd say generously, we might have 3 hours of input in Russian per week. Now, there's some homework as well, primarily exercises, but, maybe we might push that up to 5 or 6. 5 or 6 hours of input per week it's something, but it's not enough to get you, fantastic results in a fairly short period of time. Let's call a year a short period of time in language learning. So if you can get beyond that, you're going to be doing great. Input, input, input. Okay, so that was number 4. Number 5. No, that was number 3. Number 4. The importance of compelling input. And so one thing that's often talked about in the sort of second language acquisition world is that input should be both comprehensible and compelling. And so comprehensible input, this is the sort of the buzzword. It's language material that is at a level where you can understand the message, and there's still some new stuff for you in there. And compelling input is just what it sounds like, something with some intrinsic interest. So my yardstick is, would I be doing this if I weren't learning the language? If this were in English or whatever your native language is, would you be consuming this content? If not, dubious whether it's compelling. That's just the way that I catch out this concept, and it works for me. So compelling input is extremely important. There seems to be something that your mind does when it's interested in something, which allows it to stick with it. Think about something bad, like gossip. We all know gossip is bad, but you don't need willpower to gossip, to keep gossiping. You need willpower to stop gossiping. And so you're looking for stuff like that, stuff where your natural tendency is just to do it, just to consume this kind of content. So if you're into, I think I saw anime earlier. Did I see anime earlier, or did I just? All right. Well, a lot of people use anime if they're learning Japanese. This is something that they'd be watching anyway, and so it's not something that requires willpower to do. And so that's great if you're learning Japanese. Not so great if you're learning a language that doesn't have a huge sort of media industries to produce content for you. But so look for the things that where you don't need willpower. We'll talk a bit more about willpower soon. So that's the importance of compelling input. Number 5. If you have a choice between comprehensible but not compelling, and compelling but not comprehensible, choose compelling. because it's a lot easier to make compelling input comprehensible than it is to make comprehensible input compelling. And I'll give you an example. Say you were interested in an ancient language or a historical language. I'll use Old English as an example because we talked about that last week. And say you really, really, really want to read Beowulf. Okay, Beowulf is not a beginner's text in Old English. It's pretty advanced. It's, uses poetic language. It's not something that you would usually start with. But if you want to do it, you can just read it, get the small amount that you can from it, read it again and get a little bit more, read it again, get a little bit more. And if you really, really, really want to read it that much, you'll be willing to tolerate doing it 10, 20 times. And so gradually over time, that text becomes comprehensible to you. And you have to sort of get there, but it's something that you'd be willing to do because it's something so compelling to you. On the flip side, comprehensible input, if you're at a fairly low level, you're limited in what would count as comprehensible input. And so you're looking at things maybe like children's stories, maybe specific texts written for learners of the language. And, these things, people have made really cool ones. But by and large, I have not found them to be excessively interesting. And it's certainly not something that I would have read if it had been in English. And so how do you make that more interesting? You really can't. So if you have to prioritize something, you prioritize making the compelling input comprehensible. And there are some different ways to do that. One is just reading it over and over again, which does take a lot of dedication. But, as I said before, if it's something that you're interested in, you'll do it. Another one is using translations. So now this could be a translation from your target language into your native language. So say you wanted to read 100 Years of Solitude, read it in English first so that you know what's going on, and then read the Spanish version. Or you could take something that you like in English that's been translated into your target language. So the idea in both cases is you know the story, you have a really good background in this text. And so that's going to raise the bar in terms of comprehensibility, and it's going to make you read at a sort of higher level than you normally would be able to. And so if that gets you to something compelling, excellent. Another way you can do it if you're interested in something like nonfiction is to sort of read around the text. So you can read other, so you're reading something about, I don't know, say you're reading something about linguistics. Well, you could read other, linguistics textbooks in English to give you that background knowledge so that you'll understand generally what the playing field is like, what's being talked about. So that's making compelling input comprehensible. There are all sorts of different ways to do that. Those are the ones that I like to use. So that's number 5. Number 6 is willpower is not a plan. Now, maybe this says more about my own character flaws than anything else, but whenever I've said, you know what, I know that it's not that interesting, but I'll just power through it. This is the kind of talk that gets you New Year's resolutions that expire on February 14th, or 15th or 16th, that week. So they don't last long. And maybe if you're a more virtuous person than I am, you have better discipline, you can do it. I haven't found it successful, and I don't know really anyone who's found it successful. So willpower is not a plan. You have to find those things that don't need willpower. And there are plenty of things that we all do every day that require no willpower. If anything, they require willpower to stop, like the gossip example. So harness that interest. That's a superpower. If you are actually interested in something, there are a few limits to how long you'll spend on this if you're given the opportunity. And if you find that you don't have enough time to do the things you want to do, well, double dip. You want to learn a language, you want to read about geology, hey, can these two things work together? And often they can. Not always, depends on the language, depends on your ability, depends on a lot of things. But if you can make that happen, then do so. Too much willpower will burn you out every time. Absolutely. The other thing that you can do is, oftentimes we're interested in other people, right? We have friendships and relationships we want to maintain. If you can try to befriend people who speak your language, I know this is hardly groundbreaking stuff, but it can be a way of maintaining your interest, or at least allowing you to spend less time by double dipping in maintaining social relationships and learning languages. Two things that you really want to do, but you might only have time for one. Well, if those two things are in the same activities, then excellent. Okay, so that's 6. Willpower is not a plan. Number 7. This, maybe you've heard this before. Language learning is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And so this means that you have to be ready for the kinds of things that happen when you're doing something over a long period of time. So we're thinking in terms of years when it comes to language learning. So what I would recommend then is know what the path is like. You should know, if you are new at language learning, that there's a sort of curve where it starts off really, really fun and exciting, and you have a ton of motivation to do it. You're improving really quickly and everything's great. And then you hit the intermediate plateau. And when you hit the intermediate plateau, it's going to become much more of a slog. And I don't think there's any way around it. You've lost the sort of, hey, this is a new thing. This is lots of fun. I'm learning something new every day. I'm better this week than I was last week, and it's so noticeable. You're going to come to times when you go for months and you don't really feel as if you're improving. I mean, you are improving, but it's not going to feel that way. And really the way it feels is so important, because you are trying to avoid having to use willpower. And so if you feel you're not getting anywhere, it ends up becoming tough. And so you have to have a plan in place to know that this is going to happen, first of all, but also to avoid needlessly squandering your interest. So don't spend your time learning on boring things. Just because you bought some story doesn't mean you have to read it. Even if it's technically, yes, it would be really good for you. If it makes you kind of resent the language or resent your time spent learning the language, then don't do it. Instead, maybe do something that won't on paper progress you as much, but will be a great fun time. And, a month from now, when you finish that book, you may be in a different frame of mind. You may feel like you're in a mood for a bigger challenge. So things will wax and wane, your interest levels, and this is normal. This is just part of learning languages, and how you handle it is going to have a huge impact on your success, because the temptation is always just to quit when it feels like you're not making progress. And I've certainly done it many times, although I never quit. I just sort of put something over here for now and start a new language. This is, if we're talking about character flaws, that's probably a big one of mine. But rather than quit, if you really want to learn one language and you're not someone who's just sort of a collector, like perhaps I might be, then just stick with it. But stick with it not through willpower, but by being smart and not doing things that make you bored and resentful of the time. Okay. So I think that's the extent of that one. It's a marathon, number 7. So know what's ahead of you and have a plan for when things get a bit dicey. Okay, number 8. This is a tip dedicated to when things get dicey. So inevitably, yes, we're going to come to a situation where we feel not as interested in the language anymore. I don't know why. Sometimes it just feels like, am I still learning this? I'm not making progress, whatever. One thing you can do, and this seems like it wouldn't work, but it really does, is start learning a new language, not seriously, but just dabble in a new language. And you may find that even 1 hour spent learning a new language will reignite your interest or your passion for your main target language. This has happened to me several times. I I originally felt guilty about it. So, you want to pick up another language when you're already not doing well at your target language. But actually, what can happen is if you're honest about the fact that you're just trying to reignite something, go over to another language that you've been curious about. You're going to learn something interesting about language learning by looking at the differences between this language and your main target language. You're going to be able to experience that joy of being a beginner, of knowing what what that fast progress feels like, and you'll come to an appreciation of all that you've accomplished in your primary target language. And that excitement that you get when you're starting a new language it actually spreads, and it comes back, and it's kind of contagious, and it goes and reignites the passion for your main language. And at least this is what I've found, and I've talked to a lot of other people who feel the same way. So just as long as you know what you're doing, you don't think this is another gigantic project where you have to become, at a very high level in this language. You may, probably later, but it's a nice way to relight the flame. Okay, so that's number 8. Start a new language when you're bored. Tip number 9 is use guilt. Guilt's very powerful. And what you can do is, if you study with friends, if you have other friends that are learning the language along with you, if you stop, think of how they will feel. You wouldn't do that to them, would you? Okay, this, if that sort of talk occurs to you, that actually can work. I mean, maybe it's not the most healthy in the abstract sense, but if we're trying to get the job done of keeping to this language, then that can work. The guilt trip can work. And if it gets you through a 2-week period when you would have quit, but instead you don't because you don't want to disappoint people, and then, hey, guess what? That interest comes back. Hey, okay, is that really wrong? So guilt is a powerful tool. Use it wisely. And study with friends. If you can't keep your promises to yourself, keep your promises to other people. That's exactly right. Because the thing is, the interest does wax and wane over time. Who knows why? This just seems to happen. But something sparked your interest in this language in the first place. And chances are you're going to rediscover that, or something similar will come back. Languages are pretty much intrinsically interesting, and so you are going to find something relatively quickly, whether it's a song, a book, a particular person who speaks the language, a sense of duty, or of wanting to keep a heritage language alive. All of these reasons for learning a language will come back around. And so inevitably something will happen and remind you why you started learning your target language in the first place. And so I view all these little tactics as ways of kind of keeping you in the game until that happens, or maybe speeding it up a bit. Okay, so yeah, guilt, can be a good thing in careful, controlled doses. And I think we're on to number 10. And number 10 is something that I think I've hinted at before in this rant, but don't squander your interest in the language. So make sure all of your time spent in the language, or at least as much as possible, is spent doing things that don't make you resent it and don't make you don't bore you. Because if you feel bored, it's kind of the kiss of death for learning a language. It becomes this thing that you sort of have to fit in, and you notice that the thing that you used to do at the start of the morning, maybe it goes after work, and then it's right before bed. And hey, if something happens, if you schedule something in every day right before bed, by the way, there is a good chance that something will happen during the day that will mean, I guess that didn't get done. So if you start to see that happening, know that that's basically the later in the day it gets scheduled, the lower in your priority list it tends to be. And you really want to avoid that. You really want to prevent that from happening and avoid that. So don't squander your interest in the language. View it as a really precious resource that you can that you can keep and hold. And when you're about to read a book, make sure that's a book you actually want to read. And okay, so now is where we get to some practicalities that that Lucy brings up, which is advice for learning a language where there isn't a lot of media to consume. And this is really tough. And this is something that's very near and dear to my heart. As maybe you can see, I have some Latin and Sanskrit and Old English grammars over there. So I am very interested in learning historical languages, ancient languages, languages that are no longer spoken, dead languages, however you want to call them. And this advice also somewhat applies to languages which are spoken by small populations or minorities, where there aren't media industries creating things for consumption, or maybe there aren't a lot of podcasts, or there aren't a lot of YouTubers or streamers or what have you in the language. It becomes everything is just a little bit harder because you do not have the luxury of finding comprehensible and compelling input. And so this is where we come back to that idea of, if you have to prioritize one, prioritize compelling. So if you're learning, say, an ancient language, why are you learning that? Is there some text that you want to read? Do you just like the idea of going around and speaking in Old English? Do you want to be able to, I don't know, a lot of times do you want to be able to understand the history of a language? Is that why you want to do it? So what's the goal here? And then try and tailor your material to suit that goal. So if your goal is to read a text, then, you have your work cut out for you. It's that text. So you may have that as your sort of North Star, your eventual goal, and then you want to build up to that using comprehensible input. I mean, for a language like, it all really depends on the language and the quality of the resources available for it. I'm thinking in terms of Latin, there are good graded readers that sort of prepare you for certain texts. You can get students' editions of these texts, so these things can help. But the farther you wander away from, even within ancient languages, the mainstream sort of Latin would be the number one, and then you'd have things like ancient Greek and Old English. The farther you wander away from that, the less time, money, and hours have been spent on creating stuff for students, and so it becomes more difficult. So basically, it becomes an issue of following this advice or other advice you get, but just with the difficulty mode cranked up, and the stakes have never been higher. Hi, Bulent. Oh, glad you can make it. I'm going to rehydrate. I've been talking a lot. So there we have it. 10 tips for keeping language interesting, not boring. And I think we can leave it at that unless there are any questions. I'm going to open up, if there are any questions about this sort of, any of these ideas that I've been bringing up. Let's go with them. These are mainly based on my personal experience and the experience of people that I've coached or studied with. It is also informed by the literature, but I, as a linguist, I have to say that I am not a specialist in second language acquisition. So although I have access to the literature and I have read a lot of it, I don't have the perspective necessarily that a specialist in that area would have. However, I have the ability to translate it into what my own experience has taught me. And so that's the angle I come at it from. Okay, Lucy is asking how to find a language learning community. Whew. So this is one of those ones where it really depends on the language. Because some languages, major world languages, you just have so many more opportunities to find people, which can also almost be a mixed blessing. So let's think about a situation like Spanish or English or French or Mandarin. It's not necessarily that uncommon to be learning these languages. It's, in fact, it might be very common. And so that means that there are lots of people that you can find who are learning with you, but you don't have this kind of spark of kinship. It's like you meet someone who's learning Spanish, you're learning Spanish too. Okay, great. We're both learning Spanish, but so are, however many millions of other people. Have you ever been traveling in a far off land and met someone who's from your hometown while you're there on vacation? You have an instant reason to talk to each other. You know, you may not have a great deal to say, but this is someone that you would never likely speak to if you saw them on the street in your hometown. The fact that they're out of that normal context and there's a sort of, wow, you're learning, you're learning Tibetan too, not as common of a language to learn, and so there's a certain findability to people who are in those situations. So there's a kind of almost a sweet spot where there are languages that are somewhat studied in a kind of middle zone, not too rare, not too common, and those are actually, I find, the easiest to find other people who are studying the language, because no one gets blasé about it. Yeah, another person learning French, but also there is enough of a community around that language that you could probably find some study buddies who would be motivated enough to talk to you. So that's and then in terms of tactics, I would use the usual internet strategies, Twitter, whatever social network, Discord. You may be able to find people on our Discord. Actually, we have a language learning channel where people are super friendly and eager to chat about their tactics and strategies, and you may find some overlap to your Venn diagram of languages that you're learning and languages that they're learning. So I was in Seoul, and I overheard someone speaking in English, which was not that uncommon, but then he was saying that he was from my hometown. So that story actually did happen to me, and I said, whoa, you're from Hamilton as well. Hamilton's my hometown. And then we had a nice little chat. But I guarantee you, if I had seen this person just walking down the street in Hamilton and talking about something about Hamilton, I wouldn't have said anything. So there's that sort of weird dynamic. As the new year comes around, I'm thinking about my language learning goals and trying to limit myself. I've realized, I think this is different for everyone, but I've realized that I cannot do more than 2 active languages and 1 maintenance language. So, and the distinction I'm making there is 2 languages that I'm more or less working on and trying to improve my ability in actively. That means regular input. That means, whether it's a private tutor, whether it means I'm reading through books or consuming audio material, but I have a certain number of hours that I'm trying to reach every week in that language, versus the maintenance language, which is something that if I have the option to, I will look something up in that language rather than English. So for me, the maintenance language is Spanish, and I'm trying to essentially take anything where I could do it in English or Spanish, any content I could consume in either language, and do it in Spanish instead. But I don't have any kind of active language practice in terms of I'm studying vocabulary. I've got a text that I'm working through. I have a tutor I'm working with, nothing like that. And so I found my limit is 2 active and 1 maintenance. And so my active are Yiddish and Latin, and my maintenance is Spanish. But there are so many other languages. That's the tough part. So I have a few other ones on the side, sort of orbiting, that want to get back into the mix. And so maybe if my interest starts to wane in one of these, I'll pop one of those other languages in to revitalize it. Okay, so I think we have more or less gone over some ways of thinking about language learning and interest. So why don't we talk conlanging? Let's talk conlanging. So it's going to be a new segment, and conlanging, we are working on the language that we started last week. And so if you are joining us from YouTube, we're going to be working on a conlang that this is our week 2 of making. We made a nice little phonology last week, and we made We made some basic grammatical decisions. We have a few, maybe 24 words. We have a few basic sentences. Today, the plan is to make this language into something that can tell a little story. And so I have a fable, which I have. Let's see if I can. Boom. No, infinity. Don't take us into infinity. Okay, so I have a fable, which I am going to attempt, hopefully with your help, to translate. And we'll see. We'll see if we'll be able to get through all of this. The fable goes as follows. A raven, which you know is black as coal, was envious of the swan, because her feathers were white as the purest snow. The foolish bird got the idea that if he lived like the swan, swimming and diving all day long, and eating the weeds and plants that grow in the water, his feathers would turn white like the swan's. So he left his home in the woods and fields, and flew down to live on the lakes and in the marshes. But though he washed and washed all day long, almost drowning himself at it, his feathers remained as black as ever. And as the water weeds he ate did not agree with him, he got thinner and thinner, and at last he died. That's a terrible moral. Oh, grim. Okay, well, we're going to get some opportunities to work on some relatively complicated structures here. Okay, so the raven and the swan. I don't think we have words for many of this stuff. We have a word for eat, and we have oh no. I thought there was a mountain in here. There's no mountain. So we're going to have our work cut out for us in terms of vocabulary. And there's some interesting grammatical structures here that I think we should look at. I'm going to move our Streamlabs over to the other window so I can see the chat while we're doing this. I know, the poor crow. It's really drastic too. Everything's going along well. He starts eating these reeds. It's not great, but he just keeps doing it. And then he just dies. It's terrible. But I guess these things happen. Okay, so we have a duplicate here. And we have a duplicate here. Okay. So we have some complicated structures here. How are we going to make these work? I think we're going to have to simplify a little bit. And we are going to, let's rewrite this a little bit more simply. So we can say a raven, let's just copy paste this here. A raven, a thing which is as black as coal. A thing which, let's leave out the for now, was envious of the swan, because her feathers were as white as the purest snow. Okay, that's fine. Nothing too complicated there. The foolish bird got the idea that if he lived like the swan, swimming and diving all day long and eating the weeds and plants that grow in the water. Okay. Why did I choose this story again? There's a lot of long sentences. His feathers would turn white like the swan's. So he left his home in the woods and fields and flew down to live on the lakes and in the marshes. Well, okay, there's a lot of ands here, so that doesn't necessarily make it too complicated. But though he washed and washed all day long, almost drowning himself at it, let's simplify this a bit, and almost him drowned himself at it, something like thereby. His feathers remained as black as ever, and as the water weeds he ate did not agree with him, that's a bit too idiomatic. Let's say we're not healthy for him. He got thinner and thinner, and at last he died. Okay, so let's try it. Okay, so we have an SOV word order. Let's find a simple clause here that we can start with. His feathers remained as black as ever. Okay. So, feathers remain as black. So we want something like roughly His feathers black remained as black as ever. Black as let's just say his feathers remain black. Okay. So we need a word for feather. Let's make something like nafia. We don't have any ideas about plural. Nafia. Let's leave plural to the side for now. And let's just say that there's no plural marking yet. We may change our minds about that, but remain. Okay, we need a verb. Remain. We can use something like, it's too close to English stay. Skasik. Okay. So feather, remain, and we need a word for black. It would be cool if this were one of those languages that didn't have many color terms. Let's do something like, scha. Scham. Just so that we can have some. So we'd have something like naficha, scham, skasik. And since we have verby adjectives, scham is really to be black. And so we have to decide how we're going to connect these verbs together. And one thing I was thinking about is the possibility of having serial verb constructions, which is essentially when you have multiple independent verbs in the same clause. Make sure we get all of this into the screen. There we go. Multiple independent verbs in the same clause that sometimes they share an agent, so the thing that's doing the verb. In this case, it would be nafia. So we could just stack the verbs. Nafia, scham, skasik, remain, to be black, and that would be good. Crucially, with serial verb constructions, there isn't any morphology that subordinates one verb to the other. They're just verbs in a row. So let's do that. And I'm looking and I'm seeing partial reduplication for plurals. Yes. This is what we have to do. So partial reduplication is a really fun morphological phenomenon. So it would be something. So let's talk about reduplication first. Reduplication is when you do something twice. Everyone always asks, why re? Why do you need re in there if you already have duplication? The mysteries of life can't always be explained. So this would be total reduplication. Nafia. We have reduplication in English in a sort of marginal way when you say, I went to a theater. Well, not a theater. So it's this reduplication that indicates that something is like a proper version of something. So nafia. So partial reduplication happens when you don't reduplicate the whole word, you just reduplicate a part, as the name might suggest. So what that part is differs from language to language. Often it's something like a CV structure. So in that case, we would have something like nafia to be the reduplicant, the na part, is just the first CV. And it could also happen at the end, so we might have nafia, although I kind of like na nafia. I don't know. That appeals to me. So let's do that. Nanafia. I haven't put his in yet. But let's say there's plural feathers. Nanafia scham skasik. Or skazik, because I think we have nanavia scham skazik. Yeah, we can deal with that. So let's put this in bold so we can see that it's the language data here. Good. Okay. Nanafia. Now we have the question: do we want to make this possession? Do we want to deal with this possession here? I think we should, but let's just do something simple for now. Let's just make a generic third person pronoun. Something like could be something as simple as Lu. Just first thing that came to my head. And let's just say this is third person singular. So we might have Lu Nafia. Third singular, we'll translate it as his, because apparently the raven is a male raven in this version, but we just have a generic third person that works for everyone. Third person singular here, so Lu. So Lu nanafia scham skazik. Navia. Lu nanavia scham skazik. Yeah, I'm okay with that. What else do we need? Okay. So we have Lu, we have pluralization, CV reduplication. Great. It's worth looking at what would happen for a bit of a more complicated. So let's see. We have slew here. So if we wanted to pluralize slew using CV reduplication, it would actually be something like suslu, because we only have room for one C and one V. And this is really something that happens a lot in reduplication, is although the language has a relatively permissive syllable structure, like SCVC, the reduplicant, the part of the word that is that reduplication creates, actually has a much stricter syllable structure allowed. And you often see things like just CV. And so the material slew has to be simplified in order to fit this in. And so you get something like suslu, or looselu could also be an option. Excuse me. All right, suslu. So that could happen. Good. Let's see what else we could do. I think we might need to break this one. So he left his home in the woods and fields and flew down to live on the lakes and in the marshes. Let's do that. So let's break this into two parts. Okay, so let's save me from losing things. Okay. So he left his home. Okay, so we'd have something like so, third person singular, leave, and it's going to be a past tense. I don't know did we deal with past tense before? And do we really necessarily care about past tense? We did not deal with it before. One thing that we could do, so we could either just ignore tense and just have a language that doesn't bother with it that much, or what we could do is we could use our little tool of reduplication, of partial reduplication here as well. And so we have pluralization formed by CV reduplication and on nouns. And then on verbs, we have past tense formed by reduplication. That could work. So let's just go with that assumption for now. Past leave. We need home. Past leave. And it's actually the home in the woods and fields. So we need wood. So we need plural wood and plural field. We need we need our relativizer here. We might need some sort of verb to be like this. So it would look something like, so, I'll just translate into an English version. So he woods and, I forgot in. I believe we had in as a post position. So he woods and fields in to be which. So he left his home, which was in the woods and fields. Yeah, more or less. It's very hard to read out these SOV structures with any semblance of making sense in English. But basically it would be, so he woods and fields in was which. We need home left. Something like that. Which reminds me, so he woods and fields in was which home left. His home left. Okay, something like that, more or less. I forgot we need a past tense on this B. For now, anyway. So let's see. What do we actually have? We have the relativizer. So we have Lu. We have something, Lu, something, something, and something, something. And then we have Ma. Something, something, Si. Lu, something, something, something. Great. Okay, we have our work cut out for us here. Let's make some more words, shall we? So let's say, let's do something like imas. Let's do something like kilaya. Let's do something like home. Let's do something with a bit of a stancy. That works, right? Yes, our syllable structure will allow it. And what else do we have here? Okay, imaskilai home stancy. We need something like antok. Yeah, okay. I think we need more than that. Maybe let's do one that's like ukapin. Okay. Let's go over here so that we can make sure everyone can see everything. Perfect. And let's start assigning some of these. So maybe we could say so would be something like ukapin or ugabin. Ugabin lu. We need woods. Maybe that's kilaya. Woods and fields. English, these are plural. They don't need to be plural. You could just say in the wood and the field. So let's just leave it like that. Lu, kilaya, and. That should just be an X. We need and. And should be something small. And should be something very small. Let's see. What do we have here that we could make? We could make it something like ok. Just show off our uvulars. Ok. Back we go. And okay, so let's see. We have... Oh, I'm seeing pa. Okay, let's get pa in here too. So let's make pa and make uk if, because we're going to need that soon. Okay. This is going to be good. So, lu kilaya pa, and then we need field. Maybe field could be stansi. Ugabin lu kilaya pastansi. And then we need to be, and I like this hum, because I really want to show off all of our uvulars. And this also has a chance to give us hum. Don't know if we'll keep that. We might want to do something fancy with to be in the past where it's different, you know. We might get some suppletion with to be or some irregularity, but let's just have it be hum right now. So ugabin lukilaya pastanzi hum ma. Oh, I think I've gotten too many of these in here. Oh, no, ma is in. So ma huhumsi. Okay, so ugabin lu kilaya pastanzi ma huhumsi lu. Home left. Okay, so then we have, this is field, excuse me, you can't see that, apologies for the, I'm writing field behind the camera. Let's say, now we have some interesting things. Okay, so we have home, leave, and we have two words here. Let's zoom so you can see you can see everything there. Okay, imas and antok. Yeah, I think let's make antok home and imas leave. But we have something interesting going on here. So we have lu antok and then leave imas, but we have this CV reduplicant, and I kind of want to make this a bit interesting. So we have a CV reduplicant. We only have a V to deal with here. So what we could have is, we have two options. We could say, okay, just if it doesn't have, it's a V or a CV reduplicant. So we'd have something like mas. We'll have to talk about what to do with those two vowels too. But what we could also do is have a default consonant fill that C slot. And this is something that you do see from time to time. So we could have a default consonant. The default consonant is usually something, if we go to our chart, let's go up to our chart. Oops, sorry about that. I would expect the default consonant to be something coronal, one of these, in particular T. It just seems to be one of the most unmarked sounds cross-linguistically. So let's have that be our, obviously every language has its own default consonant, but let's say for the sake of this language, it's T. So then we have the CV reduplication of imas be timas. And then the question is, are we happy with this vowel sequence? And I'm not totally happy with it. Timas. We could leave it. Why don't we leave it for now? we'll leave it for now because we already had this cool default consonant insertion. We don't want to go too nuts. Okay. Ugabin lukilaya pastanzi ma hohomsi luantuk tiimas. So he left his home in the woods and fields. Cool. So there's a suggestion here from I'm here for a good time to take the consonant from later, from the next syllable. So timimas. I think that sounds on the face of it plausible. So then the question is, okay, so this is now I'm starting to think. If we did that, that's kind of cool because now the fact that we've added the reduplicant has created this situation where we need to have a consonant in between because it's vowel. But at the time when we created the reduplicant, we didn't have a consonant, we didn't have a vowel to, or sorry, we didn't have a consonant to add to the reduplicant. So we added this default T. But then to break up the hiatus, which is what we call it when there are two vowels right next to each other, we take a consonant from later on, which is an M. So you have imas turning into timimas, which I think is just weird enough to be naturalistic. Oh, I love that. Yeah, let's keep that. Oh, I love that. Okay, so he left his home in the woods and fields and flew down to live on the lakes and in the marshes. Okay, I think this is our natural next sentence to deal with. So let's just gloss it here. We want something like, and this is a great place for a serial verb construction. Flew down. So something like fly, descend, or rather descend, fly, because we're SOV. And descend, fly. So then we have some to. So this is like for the purpose of lake on and marsh in live descend fly. And let's have it so that maybe we'll only mark the tense on the last one. Okay. Yeah, I think that's something that we can do. So let's start and get some We have pa. We don't have a to. Don't have a lake. We could say ma is in or on. So that distinction there seems fairly English centric. So pa something ma, pa something ma something. Okay, be consistent with what you're writing here. Let's just write the English words because I think that's a little clearer. Save me from having to line everything up. To lake ma pa marsh ma live. Descend. Past fly. Okay, great. So let's make some more words. I think we might need more. Another column here. Yeah, okay, good. Real estate is so hard to come by these days. Okay, so let's see what we can do here. So let's make some new words. Let's do something like na. Oop, this is bold. Don't be bold. Oh, well, null is fine. Unaspa. Man to mantu, something like sumani, something like I'm literally just making things up off the top of my head. If you don't like making things up off the top of your head, you can use those word generators. I have an article about them on my website where I go through all the pros and cons of each, so you can check that out. Snockle, snockle. Yeah, I know we need something smaller too. So let's do something like fa. Okay. Tunlaka. Love it. Okay, so then let's do, let's say fa. Let's say fa is the to, like the purpose, the for the purpose of word. So pa, fa. Yes, pa, fa. So this is to, purpose. Pa, fa, lake. I'm tempted to do tunlaka, but the laka and lake, I don't want people to get the wrong idea. So why don't we do something like pa mantu? We'll use tunlaka for another word. Pa fa mantuma pa, and then we can use tunlaka. Lake. Pafamantuma, patunlakama. Okay, I'm liking the way that sounds. Oh, and then I want live to be sumani. Yes. 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 Okay. Pafamantuma, patunlakama, sumani. Okay, then we need just a little bit more. Let's make nal. Descend is nal because that's going to be used a lot. It's nice to have a nice short word for. So this is descend is go down. It's come down. It's send down. It's anything down related. So down, but it's a verb. Nal, and then let's do unaspa for fly. So here we have a vowel initial verb that's going to be reduplicated, so we're going to have some fun with that. Unaspa, I'm stirring the Conlang cauldron. Yes, yes. That'll be a fun one to. We can use that as a cold open. Yeah, let's use that as a cold open. Snakut. Yeah, we haven't had a snakut yet. We'll get to it. So, focus, Colin. Focus. Unaspa. We have a reduplicant here. We have a vowel initial word. What do? We make it tu, and then we take. Oh, this is so good. This is so good. Tu nunaspa. So the whole sentence. Let's pull this so that we know it's linguistic data. Pafa mantuma patun lakama sumani nal tun nunaspa. Yeah, I don't mind that. Okay, that's it, the whole sentence. Ugabin lukilaya pastanzi ma hohum si lu antuk timimas. Pafamantuma patunlakama sumani tal nunaspa. Okay. What's next? But though he washed and washed all day long and almost drowned himself at it. Okay, I think are going to need to break this into two. So first, but though he washed all day long and almost drowned himself at it. Okay, we need one more here. And let's just keep ourselves organized. Snakot. Yep, foolish, done. Okay, so we are going to need though, but. But could be the same as and, but let's just separate it. Wash. And then something like all day long, which could have a fun origin story to it. Then we need almost, drown, and let's say we need like an instrumental by, like, or using a spear, using a fork, that kind of notion. Okay, so so we need but, and then because this is an SOV language, we're going to have this though at the end. I feel a bit of a sneeze coming on. Or a cough, either one. Okay, so but he, so third person singular, all day long, wash, and then we can do something like continue wash, though, or although. Something like this. So we can use a serial verb construction to get this notion of he washed and washed. We could say something like wash continue, or because it's SOV, flip it, continue wash. And continue, we could even use a different word like, what could we use? We could use something like walk or go. So yeah, why don't we use something like go? And this would have this meaning of, to keep doing something over and over again. Or to follow. Oh, yes, follow. Okay, let's use follow. Follow. And could but and though be the same word? Yeah. Why don't we do that? Why don't we just get rid of but here, and because it doesn't really add a ton to the meaning. Let's just have this be although, and let's start making some things. Oh, one thing. Wash. So wash is an interesting verb. So in English, generally, wash is going to be transitive. I washed the car, I washed my dog, this kind of thing. In this fable, it's being used intransitively to mean he washed himself. Not as common, I suppose, in contemporary English, but this is a fairly old fable. And what we could do is we could use, we could start to innovate some detransitivizers. So say we have a language where the word wash is just a straight up transitive verb with no optionality to make it just intransitive to meaning wash yourself. We could just use a reflexive here. This is like something the Romance languages would do. Although he washed himself. And then we also need a reflexive here, almost drowned himself, which is a very similar kind of verb, drown. You could drown, hopefully not, but you could drown someone else, or you could drown yourself. So we need a reflexive. So let's just call it REFL. And all right, let's get to work. Making some forms. So Masfa Kona Yavalu I want to say one swansim. And let's get some short ones. Lock, lock. Siva. Mu. And Geno. Oh, and Fiti. Thank you. Okay. I think let's just make a few more. Palan. Okay, that works. Let's add what we can. So Lu, something. So all day long, follow wash. Although, and actually we're going to need something like, let's change this. Self, so reflexive. And we need a past tense here. This is kind of hard to read. Let's just do day long. Raffle past wash. Although, okay. So all day long, we could do something kind of fun, like something like day or day night, or day could be something like every day, I suppose. So maybe day night. So if we have a word for day and a word for night, we can make all day long day night, meaning encompassing the whole of day and night. So think about that. Which one could be? So I think Kona could be night. And maybe Fiti could be day. So all day long would be something like Konaviti, like night and day. Konaviti. Masfa. Yeah, okay, why don't we make Fiti day, and then Masfa we can use to be, do we have anything else? Okay, let's take a little bit of artistic license. So let's make Masfa the sun. And let's, instead of saying as white as the purest snow, let's start to do a bit of world building and say as white as the sun. And so in this culture, maybe it's a culture that doesn't have a ton of color terms. And so, the sun is described as white. And so the same color word is used for swan's feathers and for the sun. So that'll be fun. Okay. So we have Lu, Punaviti, follow. We need a follow. What could be follow? Maybe Palan. And Lu Punaviti, Palan. And what's a good reflexive here? Maybe Lak. So this is our reflexive. Okay, so then yeah, maybe maybe snow doesn't fall in this. This is kind of like a, they live in some sort of a desert region or a warm region of some kind. I'm getting some cool imagery. We'll keep at it. Let's keep developing that. If you have any ideas for the world building aspect, just drop them in the chat. This is fantastic stuff. Okay, so Lu Kunaviti Palan Lak. So Lak is going to make something reflexive, or it's going to just detransitivize it in this case. So Lu Kunaviti Palan Lak, we need wash. Maybe it's siva. So sisiva or siziva. Lu kunaviti palan lak siziva, although yavalu maybe. Siziva lu kunavidi palan lok siziva yavalu. Okay. But though he washed and washed all day long, what else happened? He almost drowned himself at it. So something like and almost reflexive past drown, and then this at it we could say something like by it, thereby, this kind of thing, drowned himself at it. Okay. So this, what do we have already? We have something like pa. We don't have an almost yet. Hinu. Okay. Pahinu. By lu. These might be separate words. Oh no, I forgot. We are postpositional. So lu something. Pahinu lu something. Luck drown. Maybe wansim. Just feels verby, you know. Lak wawansim. And this we need a by. So this is almost. So I'm keeping the documentation as up to date as I can. And that's very important. Because you don't accidentally want to make something you've already made and introduce some inconsistency. Although if you do, it's not the end of the world. Hey, we have mu here. That looks like postposition. Lu mu. So the whole sentence. Lu kunafidi palan lak siziva yavalu. Pachenu lumu lakwawansim. Cool. Oh, it goes on. Sorry. Lu nanavia schom skazik. Lu kunafi. Okay. I gotta remember to voice all these things. Lu konavidi vidi palan lak siziva yavalu. Pachinu lumulak wawanzim. Lu nanavia schom skazik. Whew. Okay. What's our situation like here? We've got maybe half of the fable done. Let's forge ahead. Let's use the first sentence here. A raven, a thing which is black as coal, was envious of the swan. So I've rephrased this to use a thing. So we have this kind of appositional structure here. A raven, in other words, a thing which is black as black as coal. And then it goes on. So that's our subject. So raven. Then what do we have next? We have. Is that the wrong size? Oh, that is the wrong size. Google Sheets keep everything the same font size challenge 2021. Raven. Let's do this as construction, just with a kind of a like. So a verb meaning like, or an adjective, a verby adjective meaning like. Coal, like, black, thing. Sorry, we need relative here. Coal, like, black, thing. We may not need thing. Let's leave it for now. Swan, envy. So instead of was envious of, we have verby adjectives, so we just have to say envied. I mean, we can do that in English too, but nevertheless. Okay, raven, coal, like. Okay, so a raven, a thing which is black as coal, was envious of the swan. So let's organize ourselves here and see what else we need. Raven, coal, like, black. Do we have any of these words? No, we don't have a single word. Let's, instead of envy, maybe let's use one of our, do you remember last week we came up with these verbs like wanfi, to look. So wanfi is literally give, I believe it's give eye. So when you look at something, you give, in this language, you give it your eye. So what if envy is give, something like give evil eye? I think that would be good. So something like evil eye give. So then it would look something like blah 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 wanfi. But other than that, and we need a word for evil. Okay, so let's just make some more words. Yagam, sculpta, masliku, fazana. I'm just making stress up as I go along, by the way. Sizik, thank you. Avitoch. Payawi. Always hard to come up with these things. Ivu. We're gonna need some short ones. Hoska. Oh, that word. Hoska. I love it. Thank you so much. Okay. Will we be enough with... Oh, we'll try it. Okay. So, we can come up with some cool etymologies for some of these things later. Okay. But one thing at a time. Build the basic structure of the language first. Add some fun things in there. And then just get everything together, and then you can sort of add adornments and embellishments and fun stuff. Yay family support. Hi Katie, thanks for tuning in. Drop some stuff in the chat if you come up with ideas for what different words might mean. So here are the words here, and if you come up with, here are the words we're trying to come up with: raven, coal, like. And so if you see any cool pairings, and this goes for all of you, please drop them in the chat. Okay, so we need the word for raven. I kind of want hoska to be raven. I don't know. I just feel like that's a raven. Let's put it in. Okay. Hoska. I love it. Okay, now we need something that's coal. Maybe coal is sculpta. We are literally making up words. We have only certain sounds that we can use, and they have to be combined in particular ways, but I've come up with some examples here. So if you come up with something and it doesn't fit the language's rules, the phonotactic rules, we can just make slight adjustments. Ivu for like. Yeah, I like that a lot. Okay. Hoska, skopta ivu. And then we need a word for black. Maybe something like masligu or fazana. Keep in mind, so far that we seem to have a language with relatively few color terms. So when we say black, we mean dark. So any kind of dark shade, maybe not red. We might have a language that's bright, dark red as the 3 color terms. And so yeah, why don't we make fazana be black, dark. Fazana C. And then thing. I feel like we should have a relatively short word for thing. But maybe something like yagam. The K in between two vowels is going to sound like a G because we have this rule which we can't see because the screen's only so big. But if we scroll a little bit down, we have the intervocalic voicing of stops and fricatives. And so that's why we're saying, if you're joining us now, yagam instead of yakam. Although I'm sure you'll find examples where I forget to do this. I'm trying to get better at it. Okay, yagam. So where were we? Payawi for swan, yes. Okay. Hoska skoptaivu fazana si yagam. Payawi. And then we need something evil. So this is thing. I see here we have 3 words left that have been made. Masliku, masligu, avidoch, and sizik. So we could, I think of all of these, okay, yes, it's coming in. Sizik for evil. Okay, thank you for making the decision for me because I was having a hard time. I could see evil in all of them. You know, I think it's very important to be able to see evil in any particular combination of random sounds. Or good. Sizik, so we have something like sizigwanfi. Sizigwanfi. Those might be separate words, you know, it's kind of a... But here's the question. If it is a separate word, then we are going to make the past tense go on wanfi. If it's one word together, then we make the past tense go on evil. So it's either sizizik wanfi or sizik wawanfi. I'm leaning a little bit towards sizik wawanfi, so it's gave I evilly to the swan. Let's put that, let's make a ruling on that for now. Sizik wawamfi. And then I think we might need to give a post position to our swan because it's giving I looking evil at the swan. So we could, let's just get a nice, let's just make a nice, maybe something like ko at, or let's say 2 for, this would be like the dative case. Let's say if we want to give it a sort of a Latin case equivalent. So swan 2 and then payawi ko. So the whole clause Hoska skoptaivu fazana si yagam payawi ko sizikwawanfi, which I think is pretty cool. All right, because our feathers were as white as the sun. So we need something like third person singular, feathers, which we already have. Oops. And then sun like white past white because. Okay, so this is what we're dealing with. We have a bunch of things already done for us because we've been working so hard up to this point. So we have something like lu nanafia. Do we have, we do, we have that wonderful word masva, and we have ivu, and then we have, I don't think we have white yet, so that's something we don't have because. But this sentence is mostly done for us. Oop, plural feller. Thanks for the catch. Lu nanavia, masva ivu, something something. And we have two words here. We have masligu. Maybe masligu could be the opposite of fazana. So bright or white. And then we have masligu. And then we just need a because. And we have one word here, avidoch. It's as good as any. For now, we can always change. The nice thing is we can always change these things later on. But we need to build up this sort of foundation to know if we, you can't know if you want to change something until you know sort of what it's fitting into. And so we build as we go, and then we go back and make changes, and then we build it up, and then we go back and make changes. But gradually, we're sort of polishing this into a language that, wow, that sort of stands on its own as a sort of modest work of art. And I don't say that to put on airs or anything, but it is. It's a creative product like anything, like a painting or like a poem. And, it's in a way better than a poem because you can write poems in it. So, hey, take that poetry. So we have something like Luna navia masfaivu mamasligu avidoch. I like that. So the whole sentence, hoska skoptaivu fazana si yagam payawiko sizikwawanfi. Luna navia masfaivu masligu avidoch. I haven't quite figured out whether we're going to voice things when they're like the S in masligu. It's not intervocalic, but it's in between a vowel and a sonorant. Yeah, not totally sure what we're going to want to do there. Or masfa. Do we want those things to be voiced? I don't think so, because they're sort of protecting each other. A little island of voicelessness in the midst of all the voicing. So masfa rather than mazva. Although mazva sounds cool too, but I think it makes more sense to be masfa. Okay, continue. The foolish bird got the idea that if he lived like the swan. Okay, I think we need to break this up a little tiny bit. No, what? Always something. Let's break it up like this. Okay, the foolish bird got the idea that. So let's have a bit of fun with this. So we can, instead of saying the foolish bird got the idea, let's say idea came to the foolish bird. An idea came to the foolish bird. So here we want something like idea or thought. Foolish relative bird to past come. And we have a few of these. I think we have, yes, snakot, foolish. So we have an idea, snakotsi, the foolish bird. Because this is a language that has verby adjectives, we have to transform that adjective into a relative clause in order to make it able to be used attributively as it is here. The foolish bird. Snakutsi, whatever bird will be. And then we have two already cool. And then do we have come? I don't think we do. So we're going to have to come up with that. Brilliant. Okay. So do we have enough room to make a few more columns? Word meaning. Yeah. Oh, coolie. Bird. Love it. And just bold these so that you can tell that they're in the language, and then that's good. Okay, so bird. Snakotsikuli. An idea, so let's make some more. Usaska. Lavi. Sunavi. Win. To. Aliba. Some Mimna. Yes. Mimna. Okay. Now what are these going to mean? Okay, so we need idea. Maybe idea is Uzaska. And, you know, I kind of feel as if we can break that apart and make it come, because, you know, I'd rather derive a word like idea. I know in some languages it is a monomorphemic word, but I kind of would like it to be something cool. But let's just, you know, let's use Uzaska because it gives us enough material to break it up into two morphemes later. So idea or thought. So we could say Uzaska snakutsikuliku. And I want to put, I like Mimna for come. Mimimna. Oh, Noklapi. Noklapi. Noklabi, sorry. Follow your own rules, Colin. If you can do nothing else. So, Kumimimna. So then this would be Uzaska snakutsikuli kumimimna. Nice. Okay. If he lived like the swan, so then we want something like third person singular, swan like live. If, you know, we could use this past form for this counterfactual conditional. Yeah, let's leave that because we're coming close to the end of the stream, and that's going to introduce a whole new world of things. Let's just leave it blank for now, and we will, or we could have something kind of like, we could have something like want, just as a sort of irrealis, like something that's not actually happening. We could use that to indicate that. So it'd be something like if he were to live like the swan, if he wanted to live like the swan. A copy for dive, and I'm gonna put sorry, we could do this. Let's rephrase this slightly because this participial construction here, swimming and diving all day long, doesn't seem like it belongs in this language, especially. So if he lived like the swan who swims and dives all day long. So then we have to have a relative clause on swan. So rel all day long, swim and dive. Okay, so that we can actually do this. I think we have a lot of these words already. So he, third person singular, lu, all day long, kunavidi, swim. Do we have swim yet? I don't think so. In between this week and next week, I will alphabetize these, but at the moment we need swim. Pa is and. Dive is naklapi, naklabi, C. And we have swan payawi. And we have like ivu. And do we have live? We do sumani. And we need want and if. So we're coming close to getting this completely done. And it's a good thing too, because we have 9 minutes left. Okay. So then we need swim. We could make swim something like lavi, swim. Lukunavidi lavi panaklapi si. Oh, aliba. Okay, yep, no. I see where you're coming from with that. Aliba panaklapi si naklabi si payawi ifusumani. Let's make this our want verb, wintu. And then we can make lavi if. Lukunavidi aliba panaklabi si payawi ivu sumani wintu lavi. Oh, we actually need to restructure the sentence a little bit because we have this conjoined thing going on here, which actually will belong with the swim and dive. So let's let's put this down here. Oh, we already have if. Thank you for the catch. Thank you again. We have if. See, this is what I'm always document as you go, but sometimes we already have uk, which I think is a nicer if than lavi actually. Untu uk. So this becomes, if you live like the swan, these translations are not actually going to line up exactly, but that's fine. That's just, we don't need the phonology anymore, I think, so we can go a bit over. Okay, so then let's just put all of this together. If he lived like the swan who swims and dives all day long and eats the weeds and plant that grow in the water. Okay, so if all day long, swim and dive, relative, swim and dive, and actually let's coordinate the relative clause. So si, pa, and then another si. Water in grow relative plants, relative. We may have to restructure this sentence later, but I'm going to forge ahead because that's a lot of clauses that are nesting within each other. But okay, so what else do we need? We need water in. We have in already. Sorry, this needs to go in the second line. This needs to go in the second line right here. And so we have a C here. We have in was ma. We have plants. That should be plural. Plant. We're so close. We're so close. We have a few more words. Okay, so let's say grow is sunavi. And let's say grow is one of these transitive verbs that needs a reflexive in order to make it intransitive. So laksunavi, the plants that grow themselves in the water. Okay, lavi for turn. Turn. Oh no, we have this other. Okay. 3 just before PL feather swan. Let's just say like the swan. Like white turn want. So this want is going to be the wood. And it's no accident that those things are actually related historically in English too. Okay, so then let's say lu na na via pa payawi ivu masliku lavi wintu. So we finished that. And we can delete these and shift up. And then we need a little bit more. We need water and grow. No, we have grow. We need water and plant. Okay, we need 2 more words. The stream will continue until this is done. You have my word. We need 2 more words. Water and plant. Did we use avidoch somewhere? I feel like we did. Yeah, we did, because it's just missing its translation. Okay, so we need water and plant. So, right. Let's go back to our phonology briefly so we can make another one. Sochna. That's an awesome word for plant. And let's get one from the audience for water. Put the finishing touches on. I will put our Sachna, so Sa Zachna. And we need water. One more, and then we'll read the whole thing. Palwi. Oh, a thing of beauty. Palwi. Okay, so then let's read the entire fable. The Raven and the Swan, I think is the name of it. So that would be Hoska Papayawi. Hoska Papayawi. Hoska skoptaivu fazana si yagam payawi ku sizik wawanfi. Lu nanavia masfa ivu mamasligu avitoch. Uzaska snakot sikuli ku mimimna. Lu kunavidi aliba panaklapi si papalwi malak sunavi si sazachna si payawi ivu sumani wintu uk. Lu nanavia payawi ivu masligu lafi wintu. Ugabin lu kilaya pastanzi ma hohom si lu antuk timimas. Pafamantu ma patunaka masumani nal tununaspa. Lu kunavidi palan laksisiva yavalu. Pahinu lu mulakwawansim. Lu nanafias kom skazik. I think we have more too. Okay. Let's just say that he and in the end he died. Let's just no. You know what? We have the power. We have the power to make this a happy ending. And he learned that is good. Why would we don't want this guy to die? He's been going to all this trouble. Let's change we're changing the fable. Okay, so we need a few more words. We need good. We need learn. And we need some sort of a demonstrative like that. Okay. So we need good, learn, and that. You know, it wasn't for him. why does that have to be? Why does the same thing have to be for everyone? That's just, come on. These fables, I tell you, sometimes. But let's just wrap it up and say that he learned that it's good. He's good the way he is. Everything's fine. And he learned that he is already good. So we need already, and we don't need that. So we need to finally get some 3 more words, and let's go back to our phonology so we can do that. Let's say, for good, we need something like maybe suva. For learn, we need something like magal, something like that maybe. And for already, we can say something like uyu. Okay, and he learned that he was already good. I suppose that should be the... So how are we going to do this? We're saying and pasculi. Ooh, okay, yeah. Do we have that already? No, we don't. But I'm going to keep uyu for something else. Maybe this is the that complementizer. So the that we're actually going to be using in this. Yeah, I know there's a bit of lag. Okay, so and he already good. So past good. Complementizer, which is that. Past learn. Because, it's a nice positive message. Palu fakuli. Good. We have suzuva. Suzuva uyu. Mamagal. Oops. Learn. So let's end our story. Pa lufakuli suzuva uyu mamagal. The end. Okay. We had to do a little bit of on-the-fly thinking there, but I think it worked out in the end, and it worked out better for the raven, right? Let's have some happy endings here. Okay. So, we did it. Congratulations all around. You have all been such a great help. I could not have done it without you. There's something magical about this, the collaboration, getting the suggestions that come in, and not just going down the same sort of the same roads that we always go down as conlangers. I find it tremendously helpful to have people to bounce ideas off of and help. So thank you so very much. This has been a great experience. If you've been watching this on YouTube and you've watched all the way to this, wow, thank you. That's wonderful. And consider perhaps subscribing, because more will come. That will be very much like this. And I think it is time now for me to turn off the lights and think of what fables we're going to do next time. So thank you all for tuning in so much. And next week, we may be a day or two off in terms of the normal schedule, because I'm running an event, an inter-intellect salon on Conlangs. So if you are interested in that, that'll be on Tuesday night, next Tuesday night, the 21st at 6 p.m. Eastern time. And I don't think I could do 4 hours of Conlanging more or less straight. So so that'll be on Tuesday. The stream will likely be on Wednesday, but I will, follow me on Twitter or look in the Discord, and you'll see exactly when everything will be. Otherwise, until next week, thank you so much for joining, and yeah, happy conlanging, happy language learning. Enjoy. Now I have to find the button that stops this thing.